You guys probably remember back in 2022, Bob Way. Now, if you don't, it's okay. If you're new to the space and you don't actually know who Bob Way is, basically, this is a former Ripple employee. And back in 2022, he was letting us in on some pretty big breadcrumbs around ISO 20022. Now, big shout out to Anderson for screenshotting these. He's actually saved these for quite some time. This post is actually new. This is from April of this year. But this post, technically speaking, a lot of these posts regarding ISO 20022 with Bob Way go back to 2022, which I'll talk about. But here's a big breadcrumb from former Ripple employee Bob Way regarding ISO 20022. If there's someone you should listen to, it's probably him. According to him, the ISO 20022 migration for cross-border payments is extremely helpful to Ripple's bank sales. I mean, can't you see how the stars are aligning? Soon, all Swift-enabled banks will have migrated to ISO 20022, and it will then be easy to integrate RippleNet, even if that's not perhaps an official term anymore, by fully migrating in November of this year, unless delayed. At the same time, we are seeing the Ripple versus SEC lawsuit fully wrapping up, with Ripple having full clarity regarding XRP. Then we're likely getting both a stablecoin and crypto market bill passed in a few months in the US as well. Banks can now custody crypto in the US as well, which is, extremely helpful for Ripple custody. It's amazing to witness all of this at once. And yes, I do agree with Anderson here. When we think about what's really going on, it's kind of crazy to see everything aligning perfectly, from stablecoin legislation to regulatory discussions ongoing in the US and outside of the US, and then also the XRP case coming to, a close. And it's all happening in 2025. It's crazy to see this. But let's actually look into a few of these posts from Bob Way. Number one, we have the reason this 2022 transition is extremely helpful to Ripple's bank sales team is that this means that every single bank, we're talking every single bank in the world, is required to implement new technology. Banks hate to change an already working process. Change can introduce new problems, which means bankers get fired. This is the number one reason most bank integrations don't happen. New system development is expensive and risky. Mistakes can generate bank losses or fines. Bankers get fired. The person you are negotiating with must have product development budget, development budget, and then also risk appetite. And then also over here we have, with a mandatory 2022 or 2022 change happening, the person you are negotiating with only needs to have one product budget. Money for development has already been allocated elsewhere. Nobody gets fired for following a mandate. That makes the sale a much easier lift for Ripple. Then, of course, last but not least, that being said, bank software sales is still a hard process, especially with the SEC suit still adding FUD to the process. But even if banks wait for a settlement, their 2022 upgraded system become much easier for Ripple to integrate with then. So again, when we think about ISO 20022, this is the key that really kind of unlocks all of these major systems to upgrade and then be easier for integration to RippleNet or Ripple Custody, Ripple Payments, whatever you want to call it, right? The main thing here is that it's much easier for blockchain to be integrated within these traditional, networks. Now, on top of that, we do know that we just got a big update from Payment Infrastructure News. The U.S. Community Bank First Financial informs about the upcoming ISO 20022 migration at Fedwire on July 14th. So this is a big one, and this is the start of the big shift. Now, July 14th is the big date to follow when it comes to the Fedwire upgrade, but towards the end of this year is when we actually start to see it fully roll out for big banks. Now, on top of that, Smoke Dog put out a great post regarding ISO 20022. This is actually with Swift. Directly from Swift, we now see blockchains based on the ISO 20022 data dictionary. ISO 20022 and blockchains go hand in hand. Listen closely.
One of many contributors. We are a registration authority, which means we do a lot of development work and maintenance work, but we don't own the standard. It's not restricted to the SWIFT network. There's a lot of market infrastructures that use ISO22 but not using the SWIFT network, and a lot of institutions also use ISO internally. So it's not restricted to the SWIFT network. It's associated with the XML syntax, but it's syntax agnostic. So we see a lot of developments around APIs that are ISO-based. We even see blockchain developments that are built on the ISO data dictionary. So whilst XML is used at the moment, predominantly it can be used in different technologies in the future as well. And really, just in a nutshell, it's a methodology for developing financial messaging standards, and it introduces this utopian world of universal financial messaging, which is what we're all striving for at the moment with both the cross-border migration and these domestic migrations that are happening in parallel.
So yeah, I mean, listen, when we think about what's really going on here, we are starting to see a big shift, and it all does include, of course, ISO 20022 being that big enabler and accelerator for all of the integrations, the adoption, and even the utilization of these specific utility-based blockchains at scale. Now, on top of this, let's actually go over here to this post, which is, according to Swift, the banking industry will first have to adopt ISO 20022 before it can adopt blockchain for payments. This is documented below. And here we actually have adoption of blockchain for banking. According to Swift, then the banking industry will first have to adopt ISO 20022 before it can adopt blockchain for payments. And even Anderson did say, doesn't get more clear than that. There's a video that I can't find where David Schwartz, Ripple CTO, says, paraphrasing, why can't banks use blockchain? Because the messaging is too bad. ISO 20022 Swift migration in particular is a much needed upgrade. And yeah, listen, when we think about messaging right now, even around traditional based networks and payment processing companies, messaging it sucks. It really just does suck. And when we think about that, right, we mainly look back at Swift, because Swift is the one that is really kind of hosting 11,000 major banks on its network, and their messaging, they're like a major key player around messaging only. They don't actually clear and settle. So Swift is in charge of messaging. If we start to see the messaging standard, aka ISO 20022, be integrated, making messaging better and really kind of upgrading it, it allows for blockchains to be integrated and utilized. This is very exciting. Now, on top of that, let's go over here to what's happening, because major enterprise companies and banks are on board. Intel, Apple, X, Airbnb, and Google are in early talks with crypto firms to explore stablecoin integration. At the same exact time that Stripe is in early talks with banks to use stablecoins for global payments. And also, we know that major banks, US banks specifically, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo, are exploring ways to issue a joint crypto stablecoin. So we now have all of these stablecoin, initiatives being taken. And I want you guys to understand that this is happening when ISO 20022 is just becoming a big deal because of the idea that it's getting close to the timeline, right? ISO 20022 is about to be, adopted, and this is going to open up the doors of opportunity for stablecoin initiatives to actually become a reality, because this also allows major banks to launch stablecoins on public blockchains tied back to, traditional rails. This reminds me of what Scott Bessent told us back in April as well. We will take a close look at regulatory impediments to blockchain, stablecoins, and new payment systems. Check it out.
We will take a close look at regulatory impediments to blockchain, stablecoins, and new payment systems. And we will consider reforms to unleash the awesome power of the American capital markets. Americans deserve a financial services industry that works for all Americans, including and especially Main Street. Under President Trump's leadership, the Treasury Department and I will deliver that to you. Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, listen, when we think about what's happening here, the market is opening its doors to blockchain. Number one, regulatory, obstacles are being removed, which will be that key that allows all of these big players to actually jump on in. And by the way, the reason why banks are now looking into this, and we even have more banks, like for an example, Banko Industrial, Guatemala's largest bank, they're integrating blockchain to power instant low-fee cross-border payments. This is all happening because the US market is opening up. Also, central banks are testing blockchain-based monetary policy using smart contracts to automate tools like interest on reserves, repos, and asset purchases in real time. And just like I said, right, like if we go back to the big banks, why are they all of a sudden looking into this? Why are they all of a sudden fully bullish on stablecoins? It's because of what we heard back in, it was throughout March and even April, but US regulators removed barriers for US banks to engage with crypto. The FDIC, the Fed, the OCC, all of them now allow digital asset services without prior approval. Banks can offer custody, serve crypto businesses, and even use blockchain with proper risk controls. And this is crazy because we continue to hear from either board members of Ripple, ex-employees at Ripple, that stablecoins are a big deal. Stablecoins equal narrow banking, just like the internet unbundled newspapers into Craigslist classified, Pinterest recipes, and Substack articles. Blockchain is unbundling banks, private credit, composable finance. It's all taking shape. Exciting times ahead. Look at this article that was written by Matt Levine. But narrow banking pops up elsewhere. One important modern form is stablecoins. A stablecoin is a crypto form of banking. You deposit dollars with a stablecoin issuer. It gives you back tokens entitling you to get your dollars back. And meanwhile, it does whatever it wants with the dollars. In the unregulated early days of crypto, whatever it wants could be quite spicy indeed. But these days, stablecoins are a big business, and there's something of a norm of parking the deposits in very safe short-term dollar-denominated assets, ideally treasury bills or reverse repos or a BlackRock money market fund. If you launched a new stablecoin today and said, we will take your dollars and use them to make loans to emerging crypto entrepreneurs, you'd have a hard time competing with the big incumbent stablecoins that say, we will take your dollars and use them to buy treasury bills, especially if, like most stablecoins, you didn't pay interest. So yeah, listen, this is how we start to see the banking industry change. This is how we start to see finance change. But the big thing that we are looking at, and the last major thing that we need to get through, is ISO 20022. The second that this is fully adopted, which is technically by the end of November of this year, if it doesn't get delayed, this is going to open up a tsunami of adoption, value, volume pouring into crypto, because this is unlocking the gates to the biggest banks in the world launching and integrating blockchain-based services into their traditional business model. This is very exciting stuff. It's very exciting for Ripple because you got to remember that Ripple has been working with these big institutional players, a crazy number of them as well, for years. But they actually didn't integrate the blockchain side of, the tech stack because of these types of obstacles. I think that we are going to see everything change. I think that we already started to see everything change. I mean, think about where we're at now today, right? All of the big traditional companies are now looking into crypto. All of the big banks are now looking into crypto. Governments are looking into crypto. At a time where regulatory discussions are accelerating, we now have bills, on congressional floor. This is huge. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because I'm more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.